Welcome, everyone. Today we're diving deep into a car that's been causing quite a stir online, the XPeng P7 Plus. We've got a ton of YouTube reviews from folks who really know their cars, and let's just say the hype is real. What's really caught my eye is this whole idea of a family-friendly EV that doesn't break the bank but still packs a punch in the tech and luxury department.
Yeah, it's a pretty interesting combination, and the initial response to this car has been nothing short of incredible. 30,000 pre-orders in the first 2 hours of launch for a sedan that's practically unheard of. So yeah, there's definitely something special about this P7 Plus.
Absolutely. So let's start with the basics, the design. The P7 Plus has gone through a pretty dramatic transformation compared to the original P7, wouldn't you say?
Oh yeah, it's a pretty noticeable change. They've gone for a more cab-forward design. Basically, the passenger cabin is pushed further towards the front. Think Mercedes EQS. It's got a similar liftback style. It gives the car a much sleeker profile, and it contributes to its insanely low drag coefficient of 0.206.
So less wind resistance, which I guess means better efficiency.
Exactly. And with electric vehicles, efficiency is everything. The lower the drag, the further you can go on a single charge.
Makes sense. Now, I've seen some reviewers talking about the back of the car, the double-decker design. Some love it, some not so much.
Yeah, it's a bold choice for sure.
Yeah.
It definitely gives the P7 Plus a distinct look, but I can see why some might find it a little, well, unusual.
All right, so we've got style and efficiency covered, but what about the tech? I mean, this is XPeng we're talking about, so I'm assuming they've loaded it up with all the bells and whistles.
Oh, they haven't held back. But the big news here is their decision to ditch LiDAR sensors. You know those laser-based systems that a lot of companies use for autonomous driving?
Wait, so they're not using LiDAR at all. Most other companies are still pretty reliant on it, aren't they?
You're right, but XPeng is going all in on a vision-only system for their self-driving features. They call it AI Hawkeye, and it relies solely on cameras and radar.
That's a big gamble, isn't it? Cameras and radar are great, but LiDAR is supposed to be so much more precise, especially in tricky situations.
Well, there are pros and cons to both approaches. LiDAR is great for creating these detailed 3D maps of the surroundings, but it's also very expensive. And it can be affected by things like heavy rain or fog. XPeng's argument is that with advanced enough cameras, radar, and AI processing, they can achieve the same level of performance without needing LiDAR.
So they're betting on software and AI to make up the difference. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out in the long run. But enough about the tech for now. Let's talk about space. You know, I've got a family, so cargo capacity is always a top priority for me. What's the P7 Plus like in that department?
Let's just say you won't have any trouble fitting everyone's luggage for that family road trip. The cargo space is a massive 725 liters. To put that into perspective, that's comparable to a Range Rover.
Seriously, that's huge for a sedan. I'm guessing rear legroom is pretty generous too then.
You guessed it. Even taller passengers will have plenty of room to stretch out in the back. It's partly because of the car's longer wheelbase, the distance between the front and rear axles. Yeah. And they've done some clever engineering with the battery placement.
So they've managed to fit in a big battery without compromising on passenger space. That's impressive. But what about the interior itself? What's the quality like?
That's where things get a little interesting. It seems like reviewers are a bit divided on this one. You do get some high-quality leather in certain areas, which definitely gives it a luxurious feel. But there are also some hard plastics, especially in the lower areas.
Ah, so it's a bit of a mixed bag then.
It seems so. It's probably a strategic decision to try and balance luxury features with affordability. After all, the P7 Plus is aiming to appeal to a wider audience.
Right, you can't have it all, at least not at every price point. But let's talk about some of those luxury features because it sounds like the P7 Plus is loaded with them, especially in terms of passenger comfort.
Oh, absolutely. It comes standard with heated, cooled, and even massaging seats. And get this, those aren't just for the front passengers. The rear passengers get to enjoy those luxuries too.
Wow, talk about keeping everyone happy. And I've heard whispers about a pretty incredible sound system too.
Oh, it's more than whispers. We're talking a 20-speaker system here, with speaker cones imported from Germany, no less. And Dolby Atmos for that immersive, three-dimensional sound.
20 speakers. I'm trying to imagine what that must sound like. Is it really that much better than a standard system?
From what reviewers are saying, it's a night and day difference.
Yeah.
It's like having a concert hall on wheels. They've really gone all out to create a premium audio experience.
Now that's what I call attention to detail. What other goodies can passengers expect?
Well, they won't be fighting over charging cables because the P7 Plus has dual 50-watt wireless charging pads. And for the folks in the back, there's an 8-inch touchscreen that lets them control the climate, media, and even watch videos.
So it's like a mini entertainment hub back there?
Exactly. It's clear XPeng is thinking about the whole family experience, not just the driver. And all of these features are things you'd typically find in much pricier cars.
Okay, so we've got a spacious, comfortable, tech-laden interior. What's it actually like to drive this thing?
Well, it seems like XPeng has made a conscious decision to prioritize comfort over sporty handling in the P7 Plus rights. Unlike the original P7, which was known for its more engaging driving dynamics, the P7 Plus opts for a softer suspension and lighter steering.
Interesting. So it's more of a smooth cruiser than a corner-carving sports sedan.
That's the impression I'm getting. It sounds like it's ideal for gliding through city streets or cruising on the highway, but maybe not as thrilling for those who are looking for a more, well, spirited driving experience.
And does it come with multiple powertrain options?
It seems like they've simplified things a bit. The P7 Plus is only available in a single-motor rear-wheel drive configuration.
Okay, so no dual motor, all-wheel drive option like some other EVs offer.
Not at the moment, at least not that we've seen in the reviews, but they do offer 2 different power outputs to choose from.
Okay, so you have some flexibility there. Now, let's talk about the elephant in the room range and efficiency. Those are always key considerations with EVs. What kind of numbers are we looking at with the P7 Plus Lite?
They've equipped the P7 Plus with 2 LFP battery options, which stands for lithium iron phosphate. These batteries are known for their longevity and safety. The smaller battery is said to deliver 602 kilometers of range, and the larger one bumps that up to an impressive 710 kilometers.
Hold on, 710 kilometers, that's a lot. But those are based on the CLTC cycle, right? How do those figures translate to real-world driving conditions?
That's a great question. The CLTC cycle, or China Light-Duty Vehicle Test Cycle, is their standard for measuring range. But it tends to be a bit more optimistic than what you'd actually experience in everyday driving.
Right, I figured as much. So those ranges are probably a bit inflated.
It's safe to assume you'll get slightly less range in real-world driving, especially depending on factors like driving style, terrain, and weather conditions. But even with a slight reduction, those are still very competitive figures.
Yeah, I mean, even 600 kilometers is more than enough for most people's daily needs. But what about those who want to take it on longer trips? How's the charging situation?
That's where things get really interesting. The P7 Plus utilizes an 800-volt charging architecture.
Okay, I've heard that term thrown around, but honestly, I'm not entirely sure what it means. Can you break that down for me?
Sure, think of it like this. The higher the voltage, the faster the car can charge. Most EVs on the market today use a 400-volt system. Moving to 800 volts is like upgrading from a standard garden hose to a fire hose when you're filling up a pool. It allows for much faster charging speeds.
Oh, that makes sense. So how fast are we talking?
XPeng claims you can charge the P7 Plus from 10% to 80% in just 20 minutes using a compatible DC fast charger. Now that's assuming ideal conditions and a powerful enough charger, but it's still incredibly quick.
Wow, 20 minutes. That's barely enough time to grab a coffee. And that brings us back to that bold decision to ditch LiDAR. With all this talk about long ranges and fast charging, how is that vision-only autonomous driving system actually performing?
Well, early reviews are surprisingly positive. It seems the AI Hawkeye system is holding its own, even without LiDAR. Reviewers say it handles various driving scenarios well, from highway cruising to navigating busy city streets.
That's encouraging to hear, but I'm still a little skeptical. It seems like such a risky move to rely solely on cameras and radar for something as complex as autonomous driving. What do you think?
I understand your skepticism. It's a bold bet, no doubt. XPeng is essentially wagering that advancements in camera technology, radar, and AI processing will be able to overcome the limitations of not having LiDAR.
So it's a gamble, but potentially a game changer if they can pull it off.
Exactly. If their vision-only system proves to be reliable and safe, it could shake up the entire industry. Other manufacturers might be forced to follow suit, leading to a shift away from expensive LiDAR systems and potentially making self-driving features more accessible in the long run.
Okay, now that's a fascinating thought, but let's dive a little deeper into the driving experience itself in the next part.
Sounds good to me.
Okay, so we know the XPeng P7 Plus has got some serious tech, a spacious interior, and a design that's, well, let's just say it's getting people talking. But let's get down to the nitty-gritty here. What's it actually like to drive this thing?
Well, if you're imagining yourself behind the wheel of some kind of tire-squealing, corner-hugging sports car, you might want to adjust your expectations a bit. The P7 Plus is more about a smooth, serene, Almost spa-like driving experience.
Spa-like, huh? Okay, now you've got my attention.
I do love a good massage.
And you're in luck. Reviewers are raving about the P7 Plus's comfortable and refined ride. They say the suspension is like perfectly tuned to just absorb every bump and imperfection in the road. One reviewer even said it feels like you're gliding on a cloud.
Gliding on a cloud sounds pretty nice, especially after a long day. But speaking of massages, you mentioned earlier that the P7 Plus has massaging seats. That's right. And not just for the driver. Both the front and rear passengers get to enjoy heated, cooled, and yes, even massaging seats. Just imagine sinking into those seats, getting a gentle massage while you're stuck in traffic. That's the level of comfort the P7 Plus is aiming for.
I'm sensing a theme here. It's like XPeng is trying to redefine what a family car can be. It's not just about getting from point A to point B. It's about the entire experience for everyone in the car.
Exactly. And it's not just the seats. Remember that panoramic sunroof we talked about? It makes the cabin feel so airy and spacious. It's almost like you're sitting in a sunroom on wheels.
Okay, I'm sold on the comfort factor.
Hmm.
But what about those mixed reviews on the interior quality? Some reviewers were talking about premium materials, while others mentioned some hard plastics. What's the story there?
It seems like XPeng had to strike a balance between luxury and affordability. They've clearly splurged on certain areas, like those incredible seats and all the high-tech features,
Yeah.
but they've also used more cost-effective materials in other parts of the cabin.
So it's a bit of a trade-off.
Yeah, I guess you could say that it's all about finding that sweet spot where you can offer a premium experience without making the car too expensive.
Yeah.
And honestly, most families are probably more concerned with having a comfortable and practical interior than having every single surface covered in fancy leather.
True enough. But while we're talking about premium experiences, let's go back to those tech features for a minute. That 8-inch touchscreen for the rear passengers, that seems like a game changer, especially for families with kids.
Oh, absolutely. It's like giving the backseat passengers their own little command center. They can control the climate, choose their own music or podcasts, even watch videos. It's like having a built-in entertainment system right there in the back seat.
No more "are we there yet" chants from the back seat. That's a win in my book.
And speaking of entertainment, don't forget about that 20-speaker Dolby Atmos sound system.
Oh yeah, the concert hall on wheels. Do the reviewers think it actually lives up to the hype?
They definitely seem to think so. They describe the audio quality as being super immersive, crystal clear, and really powerful. It's like having a front row seat at a concert, but you're cruising down the highway.
And that's what I call a road trip soundtrack. And the dual 50-watt wireless charging pads, that's got to be a lifesaver for families who are always on the go.
It's those little details that really show that XPeng is thinking about the needs of their target audience.
What about technology? It seems like every EV these days is trying to one-up the competition with all these fancy features and gadgets. But is that really what people care about?
Tech is definitely important, but it's got to be more than just bells and whistles. It has to be stuff that actually makes a difference, you know? It's not just about having the biggest touchscreen or the loudest sound system. It's about features that make the car safer, more convenient, and better connected.
So things that actually make your life easier and better. And the P7 Plus seems to have a pretty good balance of those kinds of features. I mean, that AI Hawkeye system, if it works as well as they say, could be a real game changer for safety. And those entertainment features for the backseat passengers, that's a huge win for families.
Totally. Those are things that actually address real needs and make the whole driving experience better. And don't forget about software updates. That's another big plus for EVs. They can constantly get better over time with new features and improvements.
Right, it's like having a car that gets smarter as it gets older. So we've talked about range, charging, and tech. What
Okay.
about that last piece of the puzzle, price?
Price, the big one. It doesn't matter how amazing an EV is if nobody can afford it. Right. And that's where things get really interesting. The cost of batteries have been going down steadily, and as more and more EVs are being made, we're starting to see prices that are actually competitive with regular gas-powered cars.
That's great to hear. Because at the end of the day, most people aren't going to switch to an EV unless it makes sense financially.
Exactly. And that's another area where the P7 Plus seems to have a real edge. From what we've seen, it offers a really solid set of features, a good range, all that cool tech, and it does it all at a price that's actually pretty reasonable.
So it's not just a luxury car for the wealthy. It's something that regular families could actually consider.
I think that's exactly what XPeng is going for, making electric mobility accessible to everyone.
Okay, so we've talked about the big four: range, charging, technology, and price. The things that are most likely to determine which EVs will succeed in the long run. Where do you think the XPeng P7 Plus fits into all of this? Do you think it's got what it takes to be a real contender in the EV market?
I think it definitely has the potential. It's a well-designed car. It's got a lot going for it. The spacious interior, the comfortable ride, the technology, and of course the price. But ultimately, its success is going to come down to things that are kind of out of its control, like how quickly charging infrastructure improves, whether people trust vision-only self-driving systems, and just how fast the whole world adopts EVs in general.
It's a really exciting time to be watching the car industry. It feels like everything's changing so fast. It's hard to say for sure what the future holds, but the P7 Plus is definitely a cool look at what that future might be like.
I think that's a great way to put it. It's a car that's not afraid to try new things, to push the boundaries a bit. It's a unique vision for the future of mobility, that's for sure.
Well said. Well, I think that about wraps up our deep dive into the XPeng P7 Plus guess. We hope you've enjoyed exploring this fascinating car with us and that it's maybe sparked some of your own thoughts about the future of transportation.
Always remember, do your own research, check out those reviews, and form your own opinions. The world of EVs is changing all the time. There's always something new to learn.
And who knows, maybe the next time we do one of these deep dives, we'll be talking about the EV that's parked in your driveway. Until then, keep those wheels turning and stay curious.